Give it up. Awesome, great talk. And now we have the question and answers. So a lot of people have actually sent through a number of questions.
Well, there's so I will just start from the top. So the question is, how do you know if your remote employees are really working? So that's actually the thing we do is we don't really judge people by the amounts of hours they work. We don't track them, and we don't really care about this. So what we really care about is that they actually create great work. And I think like great work is easy to evaluate. So like if you see, for instance, some design work, you can actually easily judge if it's good or bad. The same is with the code. So we don't really need to track people. This said, I think like it's a cultural thing. So personally, I use actually rescue time to monitor myself. And I think actually introducing anything like this at this point would probably be a bad idea, because I'm pretty sure like the people would, Doisters would actually be against it. But maybe like if you study early on, you can actually introduce this and it can actually be a benefit. Yeah. So the next question is, how do you deal with time zones? Our team covers Asia time zones, but joining Europe time zones for meeting with HQ, theirs are too long. Any suggestions? Yeah, I mean, that's the same problem we had. And the solution is you need to be asynchronous by default. So people, they should not expect answers right away. They should not expect real-time communication by default. So that is our solution. Yeah. The next question is very related by the first one. Should we track employees by time or by their task deliverables? As an employer, should I care how they spend their time in the day? Like I said, like we don't have work hours. We don't track people. The only thing we really care about is the deliverables. Like this may be like a cultural thing, but yeah, we have. I mean, also something to note is in a remote setting, you really have to have deep trust in your people. Like if there's not trust, you have already lost. So don't hire people that you don't trust. So like if you don't trust they will work, yeah, it probably won't work, I think. So can you give more details on what went wrong with the Stack implementation in the company? We use Stack in our company and it actually helps a lot. Yeah, so I think the problem with us is like we want to be asynchronous by default. So as a leader inside the company, I don't want to be connected 12 hours per day in order to be able to communicate with Asia, with US. I want to be able to disconnect. I want to, be able to spend time with my son. And I found this very hard in a real-time setting where everybody expects real-time communication. How to hire employee who don't have experience? This is a great question. Yeah. Actually, like one of the biggest problems with remote work is actually hiring, and one of the most difficult challenges. And it's also onboarding people. So usually, actually, what we found out is it's kind of very hard to hire people that don't have any experience in remote work. And actually, you need to onboard them in a mindful way, because else people can become like very destructive. And what we found out is like you can easily create a very unsustainable lifestyle using remote work. Because like you can just work from home, you don't socialize, you don't go out, and like mentally it can be very taxing. So actually, if you hire people that don't have experience, I would actually really recommend that you have like best practices, and maybe like co-working spaces is a good idea. Just getting outside the house, remembering to socializing. I mean, personally, I have worked in this space for over 10 years, and I was very destructive as a starter here, and I would just have the most terrible lifestyle. And this can work, like you're very productive, but then at some point, like the mental issues come up, like because we are not meant to be isolated. And I think like actually like co-working, like Steve mentioned, is actually a great way to combat this. So explain asynchronous, please, with examples. And do you manage the performance of your team? So basically, you have like synchronous communication and asynchronous communication. In asynchronous communication, you don't expect an answer right away. So this means like I can be with my son during the morning, and then I answer some stuff inside Twist, and then I can go back and be with him some more. And the people that work with me, they don't really expect that they will have like real-time communication with me. So everything is kind of like the asynchronous. So this means, yeah. And do you manage the performance of your team? So I'm actually unsure what is meant by this. So like performance reviews. I mean, we do really care about the people and that they are actually doing a great job and advancing in their careers and stuff like that. But we don't really have formal performance reviews. So basically, like we do have like one-on-ones, and we actually implement a radical candor, which is a book I recommend if you haven't read it. So basically, like, you get hard feedback if things aren't going well, and we don't hide anything. Like, and even like inside the company, like people are very radical. So like, if somebody in support thinks that engineering is doing a shit job, you know, they will let it know. So basically, I think like our performance reviews is radical candor. So like, be open, provide hard feedback, and be able to do this inside your company. Hope this answered your question. Your screenshot of Twist looks a lot like Slack. What is the main difference? So basically, like it's threads. So basically, if you know email threads, that's what we have as a default way of communicating. Yeah, and also like we don't really have any like indicators, so like online indicators, and you don't really feel like you're using a real-time tool. But you know, still like you will get real-time updates if somebody answers something or something like that. What book did you just mention? So the book I mentioned is Radical Candor. Deep Work, yeah. Yeah, Deep Work. It's pretty good. And it's basically about like how we can work like on more deep level and without like being distracted all the time. And like one of the things is that like one of the arguments inside the book is that we are currently way too distracted to actually do the meaningful work. And maybe like if you're chatting all day long, you feel like you're actually productive, but maybe you aren't. Like maybe you're just like working on shallow things. Yeah. How to hire remotely? Is it possible to build a remote team, and how? Yeah. So I mean, the thing is with remote is that you can hire from anywhere inside the world. So basically, you have like amazing talent pool of people. And for Doist, for instance, like we have a lot of people in Russia, in Portugal, and Jamaica, Philippines. So what you need to do is like basically you need to figure out like how can you reach amazing people. And there's different ways to do this. Like for instance, Reddit groups. You can try to see, you know, can you spot some talents there, and maybe also try to do it in like countries that aren't so mainstream, because yeah, if you go to like London or San Francisco, the competition is huge to actually hire people. So like don't look in those places to hire your remote workers. Yeah, so I hope that answered that. Is real-time communication ever a good idea? If yes, in what circumstances? So basically, it's very good to actually create a bond, especially like meetings. And I think that's very important of work as well. Like you need to connect with your fellow workers. And also it's very good in like emergency situations. So you can actually solve this very easily. Like we use Telegram, and if you actually need to reach somebody, there's an emergency, you can just call them or like post a message and they will get notified. But like this isn't our default way of doing stuff. And like in most cases, it's maybe like once per month this type of communication is used, and it's usually like related to server issues or something like that. So would you use Twist together with another project management tool like Asana or Trello? Yeah, you would. Like you still need to have a way to organize tasks, to plan your work. Yeah. So we personally use Todoist, but I think like Asana and Trello are great solutions as well. So there comes another one. What do you use for real-time chats then? So basically, I mean, Twist does have like you can actually use it as a real-time communication as well. So that's what we sometimes use, but it's not the default. And you kind of like if you answer, if you respond to somebody and they respond back, then you can kind of like start a real-time conversation. But in most cases, this isn't expected, and it's not like in Slack, like where you ask like, are you online right now? Like you just ask a question, and sometimes you get the answer back right away, sometimes you don't. What are the training tools? What are the training tools do you use to train remote staff? Do you use video training or documentation? Yeah, so basically what we do actually, what we started to do, and I can recommend this if you have the economy to it, is basically we have a mentor, and then we fly the person in to see his or her mentor, and they spend like a week time with them and learning about the stuff in person. Because I think like, again, even in remote work, we need a human bond and human connections. So we try to do that right away. And then, you know, like we use Paper, GitHub, and Google Docs for like documenting stuff. Yeah, but I think actually like documenting stuff is a kind of like a bit broken right now. So I don't think we do a pretty good job on it, but we are trying. So I think like the next question is kind of related to what I already answered. So we use Slack. Can we transfer all of our Slack activities and communication to Doist? Otherwise, the info before Doist will be lost. So you can't actually do this, and the reason is the communication models are very, very different. So like Slack is one-line communication, chat communication. Twist is threaded communication, and there's like no way to actually transfer. What you can do is basically like you can archive Slack, and then you can go to Slack if you need some old. That's what we did actually when we migrated, and then you still have like Slack around to look at stuff, but then you adopt Twist and start from scratch. That's at least what I would recommend. How long do I have more?
You have another 5 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I will probably take like 2 questions more and then end it. How is Twist different from email? Email is totally async and perfect. I would like to challenge the perfection aspect. So basically, like Twist is basically like a global repository of all of your communication. Email is basically like inboxes, personal inboxes. So basically, in email, you know, like conversations are stored in inboxes, and you need to forward them. And this is especially like a problem if you need to onboard new people because they can't see previous context or previous conversations. And even actually, if you want to loop people in on an existing conversation, it's just so broken. Like you need to forward them or CC them, and they will just have like a wall of stuff that's probably unformatted. And Twist is like very different. Like you have everything. Everybody sees the same conversation, the same context, and it's much easier to share stuff. And like in Twist, we have like threads. For instance, like our rebranding thread spanned for a year and included like hundreds of comments. And we could like loop in new designers and remove designers and remove people, add people during this year. So that was like a very good thing. And in Slack you could probably do the same, but it's so unnatural to actually create a channel just like for something specific. So how do you compensate and promote team members poorly on their results? some staff are really good at their jobs but make poor leaders? So that's actually a very good question, and I think you actually need to have two paths inside your company. One is like the craftsman path, and these are for like designers and developers that are just amazing for the job, but they don't want to become managers or lead people. And another one is like leadership path. And most companies, like the only thing they do is like they take their best developers or designers and promote them as managers. But this is actually, I think, wrong, because maybe like they don't really want to be managers, and maybe they're just happy being amazing at their job and not like managing people. So that's actually how we do it. Like we have two paths. Like one is craftsman, and another is like is leadership, and they are as important. So like you won't get a better salary because you're a leader. Like, yeah. Okay, I will take the last question. Is it more the way we use Slack, or is it Slack's framework that is destructive? I think actually it's the communication model itself. So you have like one line, real-time communication, and that is actually what I'm challenging. I'm not challenging Slack or like the way you implement it, but really the communication model. Yeah. So that's it. Thank you.
Awesome. Give it up for Amir. What a great educational session. Thank you.